Have you ever kept a secret so big that it changed everything when people found out? Well, I kept one for 15 whole years. And when my new daughter-in-law discovered it at her own wedding, everything in my family exploded like fireworks. This is my story, and I promise you won't believe what happened next. My name is Emily, and I'm going to tell you a story that sounds like it came from a movie, but every word of it is true. It's about money, secrets, family, and learning what really matters in life. Picture this. A beautiful summer day in June. The sun was shining. Birds were singing, and my son Michael was getting married to a girl named Rebecca. It should have been the happiest day of our lives. The wedding was at her family's huge mansion, the kind of place you see on TV with gardens bigger than 3 football fields put together. There were fountains everywhere, rose bushes taller than me, and a white chapel that could hold 300 people. I spent a long time choosing my outfit that morning. I picked a simple blue dress that I bought at a regular department store. It cost about $200. Nice, but not fancy. I wore my grandmother's pearl necklace, the only expensive thing I owned that anyone knew about. Nothing flashy. Nothing that would make people stare at me. You see, I had learned a long time ago that the best way to keep a secret is to look exactly like what people expect to see. And people expected to see a widow living comfortably but simply on her late husband's insurance, money and retirement savings. Rebecca's parents were rich. Really rich. Her dad, Mr. Harrison, owned a big manufacturing company. Her mum, Linda, wore diamond jewelry that sparkled so bright you needed sunglasses to look at her. Their cars cost more than most people's houses. The ceremony was beautiful. Michael looked so handsome in his tuxedo, and Rebecca looked like a princess in a white dress that probably cost $30,000. I watched my 32-year-old son say his vows, and my heart was full of joy and worry at the same time. During the party after the wedding, I was sitting at a table in the corner, watching Michael dance with his new wife. The band was playing, people were laughing, and everything seemed perfect. Then Rebecca came over with her parents. "Mom, Dad, this is Michael's mother," she said in a voice that sounded sweet but had something mean underneath it. Then she added something that hurt. "This is the family member we don't really talk about much. You know, the one who's been struggling a bit financially." Some people nearby laughed awkwardly. I felt my cheeks get hot, but I kept smiling like it didn't bother me. But then everything changed. Mr. Harrison looked at my face and his smile completely disappeared. His eyes got really wide, like he had seen a ghost. The champagne glass in his hand started shaking. "Wait a minute," he whispered, stepping closer to me. You're Emily Turner, aren't you? The woman from the boardroom? From the Harrison Holdings acquisition 3 years ago." The room went quiet. Rebecca's mouth dropped open. Her mum, Linda, grabbed her diamond necklace like she was choking. Michael looked completely confused. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. "I think you might be confusing me with someone else." But we both knew he wasn't confused. I could see the memory in his eyes, that boardroom meeting where I sat quietly while my lawyers did all the talking. Back then, he barely looked at me, thinking I was just someone's wife who came along for support. Mr. Harrison's face turned pale. "No," he said, his voice getting louder. "I never forget a face. You're the mysterious investor who bought my company. You're the one who saved us from bankruptcy." Rebecca looked back and forth between her father and me. Her look of superiority, that mean smile she always had, was replaced by pure shock and confusion. You see, nobody knew my secret. Not even my own son. And just like that, 15 years of carefully protected privacy crumbled in a single moment. Let me go back in time to explain everything. This story really starts 15 years ago. Back then, my husband Thomas and I worked as engineers in Austin, Texas. We weren't rich or famous, Just normal people doing normal jobs. We lived in a modest house, drove regular cars, and saved our money carefully. Thomas worked for a technology company, and I worked as a consultant. We made decent money enough to be comfortable, but we were definitely not rich. But Thomas was really, really smart. Not just regular smart, but genius smart. He understood how things worked in ways that other people didn't. In 2010, Thomas invented something special. It was a small piece of technology that made cell phone batteries last much longer. Back then, everyone complained about their phone dying too fast. Thomas figured out how to fix that problem. At first, we thought maybe we could sell his invention and have some extra money for retirement. Maybe enough to take a nice vacation. Or buy a bigger house. We had no idea we were sitting on a gold mine. The patent, that's the legal paper that says you own an invention, was sold in 2012 for $25 million. That's $25 million. Can you even imagine having that much money? I couldn't. When the lawyers told us the final number, I actually thought they made a mistake. Our son Michael was 24 years old then. He had just finished his master's degree in marketing and was starting his first real job at an advertising company. He was so excited about his career, working 60 hours a week, trying to prove himself. The day we got that money, Thomas and I stayed up all night talking. We had to make a big decision, maybe the biggest decision of our lives. Should we tell Michael about the money? Some parents would have told their kids immediately. They would have celebrated together, maybe bought fancy cars and big houses. But Thomas and I decided something different. We decided to keep it secret. We told Michael we had received a nice payout from the patent, enough to be comfortable, but nothing extravagant. He probably assumed it was $1 million or $2 million at most. He was happy for us and went right back to focusing on his own career. Why did we lie to our own son? Because we wanted Michael to work hard and make his own way in life. We didn't want him to become lazy, thinking he had millions of dollars waiting for him. We didn't want him to stop trying because he knew he'd never have to worry about money. We wanted him to have the pride of earning his own success. Looking back, I don't know if we made the right choice. But at the time, it seemed like the loving thing to do. But here's the thing, that $25 million was just the beginning. Thomas and I took that money and started learning about investing. We read books, took classes, and talked to financial advisors. At first, we were really careful, putting money in safe, borrowing investments like government bonds. But Thomas had a gift for spotting opportunities before other people did. He could look at a small company and somehow know if it would become successful. We started investing in technology companies that were just starting out. We bought buildings in cities that were growing. We purchased parts of businesses that had good products but needed better management. Every year, our money grew bigger and bigger. When Michael got his first promotion, we celebrated with him at his favorite restaurant. He was so proud, and we were proud of him. He had no idea that the modest parent celebrating with him had just made $5 million in a single investment. When Michael bought his first house, a nice 3-bedroom place that he saved for years to afford, we helped him with a small down payment, just $20,000, which he thought was incredibly generous from his retired parents. He didn't know we could have bought him a mansion without even noticing it in our budget. By 2018, our portfolio was worth over $200 million. Then tragedy struck. In 2020, Thomas got sick. Cancer. It happened fast, too fast. Within 6 months, my brilliant, kind husband was gone. I was devastated. We had been married for 35 years. He was my best friend, my partner in everything. But Thomas left me with something. A fortune that had grown to over $800 million. $800 million. That's more money than most people can even imagine. and I was all alone, trying to figure out what to do with it. 2 years after Thomas died, I was still grieving but also looking for ways to honor his memory. Thomas had always said that good businesses with bad management were opportunities, not failures. That's when I learned about Harrison Holdings, Mr. Harrison's manufacturing company. The company made parts for cars and airplanes. It was a good company with talented workers and loyal customers. But Mr. Harrison had made terrible decisions. He had borrowed too much money to buy out his competitors. When the economy got tough, he couldn't pay back those loans. Harrison Holdings was about to go bankrupt. Hundreds of people were going to lose their jobs. I saw an opportunity not to make money, but to save something worth saving. I hired the best lawyers in Texas and told them I wanted complete privacy. They created something called a shell company, a business name that hid my real identity. To the outside world, it looked like a big investment firm was buying Harrison Holdings. The purchase price was $700 million. I remember the day of the signing. I wore a simple navy suit and sat in the back of the boardroom, while my lawyers handled all the talking. Mr. Harrison was there, looking defeated and embarrassed. He had to sell his company, the business his father had started, to strangers. He barely looked at me. I think he assumed I was just someone's assistant or maybe a lawyer's wife, therefore. Support. He had no idea that the quiet woman in the back of the room was the person who had just bought his entire company. After the acquisition, I brought in professional managers who knew how to run manufacturing companies. We paid off the debts, reorganized the operations, and focused on what the company did best. Within a year, Harrison Holdings was profitable again. All those workers kept their jobs. The company thrived. And Mr. Harrison, I arranged for him to stay on as a consultant with a generous salary. He got to keep his dignity and his income, even though he no longer owned the company. The irony was delicious. 3 years later, his daughter Rebecca would marry my son and look down on me, asking if I needed help managing my finances. Meanwhile, her family's comfortable lifestyle depended entirely on the company I owned and the salary I paid her father. The morning after the wedding, I woke up at 5 a.m. I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying Mr. Harrison's face when he recognized me, and the shock in Rebecca's eyes. At 7 a.m., Michael called me. "Mom, I'm coming over. We need to talk. Now." He arrived 20 minutes later, still in his wrinkled clothes from the day before. His hair was messy, and he had dark circles under his eyes. He clearly hadn't slept either. "What happened last night?" he demanded, pacing back and forth in my small living room like a caged lion. "After you left, Mr. Harrison pulled me aside and started asking me really weird questions." "What kind of questions?" I asked, even though I could already guess. "Questions about Dad's patents, about whether you were involved in business deals, about our family's real financial situation." Michael stopped pacing and looked directly at me with those serious brown eyes he inherited from Thomas. "Mum, he seemed to think you were some kind of major investor. He kept saying, 'Your mother,' in this strange tone, like he knew something I didn't." My coffee suddenly tasted bitter. This was the conversation I had been both expecting and dreading for 15 years. "Dylan, sit down," I said gently. "We need to talk about something important." But before I could continue, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Rebecca. "Emily, I think we should have lunch today. There are some family matters, Dylan, and I need to discuss with you. Let's say 1 p.m. at Riverside Restaurant." I showed the message to Michael. His face changed from confused to worried. "What do you think she wants?" he asked. I had a pretty good idea. Rebecca Reynolds was smart Wharton Business School smart. She wasn't the type to leave things unresolved, especially when money was involved. "I think," I said carefully, that your wife spent all night asking her father questions. And now she wants answers. Michael sat down heavily on my couch. Mum, is there something you need to tell me about our family's finances? I looked at my son, the young man I had raised to value honesty and hard work above everything else. The son who worked 60-hour weeks for promotions he earned himself. The son who saved for 5 years to afford his house. How could I explain that while he was working so hard, I could have bought his entire company without even noticing it in my bank account? Everything, I finally said. I need to tell you everything. But first, let's hear what Rebecca has to say at lunch. Riverside Restaurant was the most expensive place in the city. A single meal there cost $300 per person. It had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river, crystal chandeliers and waiters in formal tuxedos. When Michael and I arrived at 1 p.m., Rebecca was already there. She had gotten there 45 minutes early to claim the best table, the corner spot with the most privacy, and the best view. She was dressed in an expensive business suit. I recognized it from a fashion magazine I had seen. Her blonde hair was perfect. Her makeup was perfect, and she had a leather folder sitting on the table in front of her. Emily, Michael, thank you so much for coming, she said, standing up to hug us both. Her smile was bright and cheerful, but I could see something calculating in her green eyes as she looked at my simple black dress and understated jewelry. I took the liberty of ordering wine, she said as we sat down. A 2015 Chateau Margaux. I thought we should celebrate being a family. The wine she ordered cost almost $1,000. She was clearly setting a tone, showing that she understood money and luxury. That's very generous, I said carefully, though perhaps a bit much for a casual family lunch. Oh, I don't think there's anything casual about our family anymore, Rebecca replied, and her smile changed slightly. It was still there, but now it had a sharp edge to it, like a knife hidden behind silk. She opened her leather folder and pulled out some papers. Last night, I had a very long conversation with Daddy about his business experiences, she began. He told me some absolutely fascinating stories about corporate acquisitions and mysterious investors. Michael looked back and forth between us, clearly sensing tension, but not understanding where it was coming from. Rebecca, what does this have to do with lunch? He asked. She ignored him completely. Her focus was entirely on me. You know, Emily, I studied finance at Wharton. One of my favorite subjects was complex investment structures. Things like shell companies and anonymous acquisitions. It's amazing how creative wealthy people can be when they want privacy. I took a sip of the expensive wine and waited. I wanted her to make the first move in this chess game. The funny thing about discreet investors, Rebecca continued, leaning forward slightly, is that they usually have very good reasons for their privacy. Typically, it's because they're managing large fortunes they prefer to keep out of the public eye. That sounds reasonable, I responded calmly. Rebecca pulled out her phone and showed us a photograph. It was a screenshot of a business article from 3 years ago about the Harrison Holdings acquisition. The photo quality was poor, clearly blown up from a small image, but it showed a boardroom scene with lawyers and executives. In the back, partially hidden, was a woman in a dark suit. The image quality isn't great, Rebecca said casually, but this woman's posture, her height, even the way she's holding her purse, it's remarkably similar to you, Emily. Michael leaned in to look at the photo more closely. I could see recognition beginning to dawn on his face. I had to admit Rebecca had done her homework. But I also felt the walls of privacy I had so carefully built for 15 years beginning to crack and crumble. What an interesting coincidence, I said carefully. Isn't it? Rebecca's smile now had a victorious edge. Of course, coincidences happen all the time. Like how my family's financial crisis happened right when someone paid $700 million for Daddy's company. or how that mysterious investor completely disappeared after the purchase, almost as if she preferred to remain anonymous. The silence at the table was thick enough to cut with a knife. Michael put down his wine glass. His hand was trembling slightly. "Mum," he said quietly, "please tell me you're not who she thinks you are." I looked at my son, the young man I had raised to value honesty above all else. And I knew that 15 years of well-intentioned lies were finally catching up with me. "Michael," I said softly, "there are things about your father's patents and our investments that I never told you. Things I thought I was protecting you from." Rebecca's face lit up with triumph. She looked like someone who had just won a major victory. But as I watched her celebrate, what she clearly believed was her win. I wondered if she had any idea what she had just unleashed. Because Emily Turner, the quiet widow, was about to become someone very different. And this game was far from over. 3 days later, I was sitting in my financial advisor's downtown office. His name was James Sullivan, and he had been managing my investments for 10 years. He was a serious man in his 50s with grey hair and glasses. The lunch with Michael and Rebecca had ended badly. After I confirmed that yes, I was the investor who bought Harrison Holdings, Michael had stood up and walked out without saying another word. Rebecca had stayed for a few more minutes, making comments about family financial planning and how we all needed to work together going forward. Now I needed to understand exactly what I was up against. "Emily, I have to say, this is a very unusual request," James said, adjusting his glasses as he reviewed the documents on his computer screen. "Why the sudden interest in your daughter-in-law's family financial history?" I had called James the morning after our disastrous lunch. I asked him for a complete workup on the Harrison family's current finances, their assets, debts, income sources, everything. What I was discovering was far more complicated than I had imagined. "I didn't realize that when I bought Harrison Holdings," I said slowly, "I was essentially taking away my future daughter-in-law's inheritance." James raised his eyebrows. "Your daughter-in-law? The one who just married Michael?" When I nodded, he let out a low whistle. "Oh boy, that's incredibly complicated. Tell me something I don't know." He pulled up several files on his computer and turned the monitor so I could see. "Okay, let's review this." In 2021, Harrison Holdings was in serious financial trouble. Mr. Harrison had taken out massive loans to expand the company, buying up smaller competitors, building new facilities, hiring aggressively. "I remember," I said. "It had been one of my most strategic investments, buying a solid company at a discount because of temporary financial problems." "According to my research," James continued, "Rebecca Harrison was being groomed as her father's successor. She worked at the company every summer during college. She got her MBA specifically to prepare for running a family business. She told everyone, friends, classmates, potential employers, that she was set to inherit and run Harrison Holdings. Everything was starting to make sense in a very uncomfortable way. So when I bought the company and brought in professional management," I said slowly, "I basically eliminated her entire career path." "More than that," James said, clicking through more documents. "You eliminated what she considered her birthright. She grew up believing she would be CEO of a major manufacturing company. Then suddenly, the company was sold to strangers, and she was left with nothing but her MBA and unfulfilled expectations." He opened another file. "But here's where it gets really interesting. Someone has been making very specific inquiries about your investment activities. Professional-level inquiries using legal terms and financial jargon. A knot formed in my stomach. What kind of inquiries? Questions about shell companies, acquisition structures, and anonymous investors. The kind of research that suggests someone with advanced business training is involved." He turned the monitor toward me again, showing a report. Emily, I'm fairly certain your daughter-in-law has hired a private investigator. The implications hit me immediately. 15 years of carefully constructed legal structures and deliberate privacy could potentially be unraveled if someone was motivated enough and had the resources to dig deep enough. How vulnerable am I? I asked. That depends on how deep they want to dig, James said seriously. Your privacy structures are solid. I made sure of that. But they're not completely impenetrable. A really determined investigation with proper legal backing could eventually trace everything back to you. I thought about Rebecca's demeanor at lunch, how she had presented her findings like a chess player revealing checkmate, confident and in control. What would you recommend? I asked. Honestly, get ahead of this, James said. If she's building towards some kind of financial claim or trying to create leverage for a negotiation, you need to control the narrative before she has a chance to expose you publicly. He leaned back in his chair, looking thoughtful. But Emily, there's something else you need to consider. If this goes public, if your fortune becomes widely known, it won't just affect you. Michael's career could be compromised. What do you mean? Think about it. Michael's built his reputation on his own merit. He's gotten promotions, recognition, respect, all earned through hard work. But if people suddenly discover his mother is a secret tycoon worth hundreds of millions, they'll start questioning every success he's ever had. Was that promotion really earned? Or did Mom make a phone call? Did he really win that account through skill? Or did family money open doors? I hadn't fully considered that angle. Michael's sense of pride and accomplishment could be destroyed, not by anything he did, but by my secret being revealed. It's a painful irony, I said quietly. I hid my fortune to protect him from becoming entitled and lazy. And now that very secret could destroy everything he's worked for. There's one more thing, James said, pulling up a final document. The Harrison family's current financial situation is more fragile than it appears. On the surface, they look wealthy, the mansion, the cars, the lifestyle. But look at this. He showed me detailed financial records. The Harrison estate was mortgaged to 80% of its value. Their investment accounts have been steadily drained over the past 3 years to maintain their lifestyle. They had significant debts from credit cards and personal loans. They've been living on borrowed money, James explained. Probably waiting for Mr. Harrison to find another business opportunity, or for Rebecca to marry someone wealthy. And now she thinks she has, I finished. Exactly. Emily, if she's planning to ask for financial support, or try to get involved in your investments, you need to be prepared. This is about to become much more than just a family disagreement. This is turning into a financial negotiation with very high stakes. When I left James's office that afternoon, I realized I was facing the same kind of choice Thomas and I had made 15 years ago. Only now the stakes were much higher. This time I wasn't just protecting my son's independence and work ethic. I was fighting to keep everything I had built from being turned into a weapon against my own family. That night, I did something I hadn't done in months. I opened a bottle of really fine wine, a 1998 Bordeaux that Thomas and I had been saving for a special occasion that never came. I poured myself a generous glass and spread 15 years of financial records across my dining room table. If Rebecca wanted to play detective and investigator, she was about to learn she had picked the wrong person to investigate. The numbers told a story of patience and strategy. Thomas and I hadn't just gotten lucky with one invention. We had been methodical, careful, and smart. We researched every investment thoroughly. We diversified across different industries. We reinvested our profits wisely. That initial 25 million had grown to 50 million by 2015, then doubled to 100 million by 2017, and reached 200 million by 2018. By the time Thomas died in 2020, We were worth over $700 million. In the 5 years since then, I had continued to grow that fortune. I now had significant ownership stakes in 12 different companies, held licensing agreements on 17 different technologies, and had investments ranging from renewable energy to biotechnology to real estate. I wasn't just a woman who had money. I was deeply integrated into the world of innovation and business in ways that even James didn't fully understand. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "Mum, Rebecca and I want to come over tomorrow night. She has some ideas about how our family should handle this new information." I almost laughed out loud. Rebecca had ideas. I could already imagine what they were: something involving family, trusts and board meetings, and a more collaborative approach to my money. What she didn't understand was that I had been managing expectations and protecting my interests for longer than she had been alive. I opened my laptop and started digging into Rebecca's recent activities. If she had hired a private investigator, there would be a digital trail somewhere. What I found was both fascinating and disturbing. Rebecca had indeed hired a firm called Aguilar Private Investigations, which specialized in tracking corporate assets and ownership structures. The fees were substantial, over $40,000 in the past 2 weeks alone. She had also contacted a law firm called Vance Peters and Associates, which specialized in family estate disputes and trust litigation. She'd had 3 meetings with them, and most tellingly, she had opened several new lines of credit in the past month, borrowing a total of nearly $100,000. She was financing this investigation with borrowed money, clearly betting on a substantial return. She hadn't just married my son for love. She had married him as an investment strategy. I found something else that made my blood run cold. In her email history, which I accessed through some very expensive but very legal computer forensics that James's firm provided, I found a conversation with her college roommate from 3 weeks before she had even met Michael. The email read, "Sarah, I'm so tired of dating guys who have no money and no prospects. I need to find someone from a good family, someone stable with long-term potential. I'm almost 30, and I need to think strategically about my future. Love is great, but security is better."